Hey, what is up, guys? Today's episode is brought to you by the incredible sponsors of the program, ChemicalFreeBody.com. If health and wellness is a priority for you, then check out the incredible products over at Chemical Free Body. Plant-based nutritional supplements from Super Greens, my favorite, with all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients and micronutrients in just one single scoop. Toss it in your glass of water, your shake, your smoothie, however you want to do it. They also have other incredible products, gut detoxers, anti-inflammatories, immune boosters, and so much more. ChemicalFreeBody.com, and check out that promo code ItsMe, all one word, ItsMe, for discounts at your checkout. And look, we have so many different insurance policies in our life, and if the last couple years has taught you anything, it taught me that storable food needs to be on that list. Prepare with ItsMe.com, the incredible products over at My Patriot Supply. They have 4-week supply of food, 3-month supply, all products with up to a 25-year shelf life. Have the peace of mind, ladies and gentlemen, of having storable food and have that supply on deck. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And if you have, shaving needs like nice chrome domes like me, SkullShaver.com is a whole new concept in face and head shaving. The products offered over there include men's head shavers, face shavers, hair clippers, and trimmers. And ladies, we haven't forgot about you with the butterfly kiss. And we also have a large selection of accessories to make your life that much more simple. All of the shavers come with removable, washable blades made of premium Japanese stainless steel to ensure flawless results. It just makes it so much easier. You can get your shaving done anytime, anywhere, in or out of the shower. It gets no better. SkullShaver.com /discount/ItsMe. All of the links to these incredible products will be in the description of this episode. So without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
I'm so very stoked. I followed this man's career for some time and those he's represented for some time. I had the pleasure to actually meet him this summer during the Pat Miletich-Michael Nunn fight. He is the El Jefe over there at Legacy Fighting Alliance. He's the co-founder of the Black House Fight Team. Like I said, he's the manager of such great. He used to manage Junior Dos Santos, former champion. He's currently representing Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira twins, I believe both of them, Jose Aldo, Lyoto Machida, and of course, if you've heard of him, he's possibly considered the best to ever freaking do it. Anderson the Spider Silva. Ed Soares is joining us today. Ed, thank you for taking the time, my friend.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Thanks for the nice intro there.
Well, that's all you, man. You did it. Yeah, I mean, I know we're living in crazy times, man. I want to, not keep you too long, but a lot of things I want to pick your brain on. So most specifically, when I talk to people who've done such incredible things, I always wonder where it started for them. For the MMA bug, when did that bite you? When did you get into the game, sir?
Well, I've always been a fan of MMA. I started training jiu-jitsu with Hoist. Around that time is when I started training, so that was almost 30 years ago, and that's when I started kind of getting into MMA. I trained a little jiu-jitsu, and then of course and then Hoist went, and then I actually moved away, and when I moved away, Hoist, that's when he fought in the first UFC, and I've always been a fan of it, and just that's how I was into it. You know what I mean? That's how I got into it initially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that time flies, man. Holy crap. But I mean, I know as part of this new company, not necessarily new, Legacy Fighting Alliance was kind of some moves from back in the day. Jeff Aronson, his group, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, and then there was a merge with there's a couple merges going on that created LFA.
Actually, so what happened was that I back in 2012, I got asked to become the president of the RFA.
RFA, yes.
Which was Resurrection Fighting Alliance. And I became the president of that. And then right when that happened, there was a thing called a company at the time called Titan FC.
Titan FC, that's right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but back then, I actually forgot the guy's name.
Jeff. One of them was Jeff Aronson. That's who I had on my show when I.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't the guy back then.
Oh, okay.
It was. He wasn't even involved in that. He wasn't even involved in the sport. I forgot the guy's
Chad
name.
Smith?
Totally
Chad something or other?
Nope, it wasn't Chad. It was Joe Kelly. That's what his name was.
Okay.
Joe Kelly was he was the original guy who started Titan FC. And what ended up happening is Titan FC was in a little bit of a financial crunch, and they kind of approached the RFA to merge with them, and we decided to, but we also kind of put some stipulations in the contract that was that he had to follow through with some of the things that he promised. And what happened was that's how we got on Access TV. So what happened was the RFA had done 3 events at that time. None of them were broadcasted. Then we did that deal where we kind of merged with Titan, and then RFA 4 and 5 were done on Access TV. Unfortunately, some of the things that that guy Joe Kelly at the time promised ended up not really following through. Thank God our attorneys who did the deal kind of put an out in the clause saying that if things weren't copacetic on both sides, that by the end of that year, which would be 2012, that we could diminish the deal. And basically that's what ended up happening. He made a lot of promises he didn't follow through on, so we just decided to go separate ways. At that time, Access TV was not very happy with Titan, but really liked the type of cards and the type of events we were doing. So at that time, in the beginning of 2013, we separated from Titan, and then Access TV came directly to us, and we ended up doing a deal with them. So that's how RFA got into onto Access TV, was actually through the merger, but then it ended up not working out the way we thought it would. But the good thing was we ended up still with the television deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about it a lot of times with the production company we work with, assembling the right team. Like sometimes things might seem good on paper, but there's a slip between a cup and a lip, and like you said, sometimes a lot of people make promises they just don't come through on. But here you guys are now, however many years later, with a very successful promotion. Obviously, the Access TV deal kind of went away. I don't know how you feel about talking about that, but I was absolutely relieved because your guys' product was so great. You guys were basically a feeder system for the UFC, so it's good to see you guys on UFC Fight Pass. How has that been? That transition, and how much was a blow to that, or how much was that of a blow to you guys having that TV deal with Access removed, and how relieved were you getting linked up with the UFC?
Well, back when the RFA, the RFA and Legacy, we were both, events on. We were both events that were on Access TV, and from a management background, we were the first event ever. I don't think there was ever an event before ours in 2012 that came out and said, hey, we're a developmental organization for the UFC. A lot of times promoters had egos, they say, oh, no, I'm going to be like the UFC, or I'm going to be just like it, or I'm going to be bigger, or, people would trip out. And I realized as a manager that, you take guys that were fighting in a high school gymnasium in front of 500 people. The next thing you know, they get a phone call to fight in the UFC, and 2 weeks later, they're walking out in the Staples Center in front of 18,000 people being broadcasted in over 200 countries. And it was a shocker to them. So I always thought, hey, we got to develop something to help these guys develop. And realizing that the sport needed something like that. And we were the first ones that come out and say that. And I think we were embraced by the UFC. As a matter of fact, we were the first organization outside of the UFC to have the rights to use an octagon, was the RFA, because I went to Dana and Lorenzo and I said, hey, listen, if I'm the developmental organization for the UFC, I want to be able to have them fight in an octagon. And they were totally cool about it, and we worked something out, and we were able to license and use an octagon in the RFA. And with that being said, we were on Access TV, and Legacy was doing a great job, with Mick Maynard at the time was running the ship there, and he was doing a great job developing great fighters like Holly Holm and Henry Cejudo and Tim Mean. So many great athletes that came from Legacy, and so many times people would go back and forth saying, oh man, Legacy's better than RFA, or RFA's better than Legacy, and we always had a very friendly sort of relationship, but at the end of the day, we all have a little bit of competitiveness in it.
Of course.
And I remember when that happened, I said to Access TV, I said, hey, people are going back and forth saying which is better or which is this. I said, let's put it up. Let's have an RFA versus Legacy, and we did that back in May of 2015, and we did an event that was on Access TV, which was literally, it was the first time ever in North America that two North American promotions went head up, against each other. And we did it on Access, and it really got a lot of buzz, and it was a great event. We did three fights of our guys fighting each other, and then we did one of our title fights, one of their title fights, and then the last fight of the night was their champion versus our champion for what they called we created a title called the Access TV Champion. So we ended up doing that, and it was really cool. I mean, we went into it. The first three fights, the RFA won two of the fights, Legacy won one of the fights, and then we had the two title fights of each organization, and then the final fight was Damasio Page, which was their flyweight champion, versus Alexander Pantoja, who was our flyweight champ. And at the time, Damasio Page was the heavy favorite. And it was, we went into that final fight, and I don't know if you've ever got to see that fight, but it was an incredible ending. At the end of the second round, Pantoja had him in a triangle and was, choking him out. The bell rang, and when they separated him, Damasio Page was passed out on top of him, and the fight was over. So, the RFA ended up winning three of the fights, and they won one. But, it was great that we won. Of course, that was awesome. But I think the biggest thing that we got from that is that we saw that, Mick was a great dude, and we could work together. That was in 2015. Then next year in 2016 is when we started having the talks about, hey, instead of people going back and forth and saying who's the number 3 show or who's the number 1 developmental organization, I said, Mick, if we merge our companies, there's going to be no doubt in the world who the number 1 developmental organization is. And we kind of came to an agreement. And we announced that in September of 2016, and we launched the LFA in January of 2017.
Wow. Sometimes that's an interesting story, man. Very fascinating. Sometimes competition can breed collaboration, and that's cool that it came together like that. And you guys have just been pumping it out. And, obviously, 2020 has been absolutely crazy. And you guys started back up, got the machine back going. I think it was June or July. And obviously one of your announcers, one of my good friends, co-host of another show we do. You have a Croatian sensation, Pat Milicic, calling fights for you. You guys were just, I believe, in Kansas last weekend. And he sent me, I was calling fights for Caged Aggression, which he showed up to Saturday to call. But he sent me a clip of just insane knockout. Alex Pereira was going up against a gentleman by the name of Thomas Powell. Alex Pereira is the guy who pretty much knocked out Israel Adesanya in the kickboxing days. This was an insane knockout. I'm looking for that guy to be in the UFC sometime soon. What's up with Pereira?
Well, yeah, Pereira is definitely, he's still technically under contract with Glory, but the deal that was done with Glory, because, Alex was interested in crossing over to MMA, so we were able to kind of do a deal with them where it allowed him during his Glory contract to still be able to fight MMA in the LFA. And last Friday was the first fight of his in the LFA, and like I said, he delivered. He lived up to what everyone was expecting. He's a very talented fighter, and I would have to say that I could see him in the UFC here very, very soon.
A rematch between him and Izzy would be very, very interesting. I'm sure that would do some numbers. I mean, and again, this has been such a crazy time to do what you do. And like I mentioned before, I announced for an organization called Caged Aggression MMA. We've literally had, back-to-back nights of fights, September, October, and November. We just had our last one last weekend. And as being in Iowa, the Iowa governor just made like a proclamation of new lockdowns, new restrictions. But Mike, being the awesome promoter he is, went to battle not just for his company, but for his fighters and for his fans, people who traveled and people who were cutting weight, etc. So we were able to do the event with a lot of concessions, no pun intended. There were no concessions. There was no food, no drink, but we still moved forward. How has that been for you guys, making those adaptations to adhere to COVID guidelines, etc., while still creating content, putting out events?
Yeah, for us, like I said, we're blessed to be with such a great television partner like the UFC Fight Pass. They understand the position we're in. They understand what a lifeline we are to developing talent, and we were able to make it work. We had great partners with the UFC, and also, when we first started off, we were the second company back to do that. And I think that the biggest thing that's been able to help us is having such a great distribution partners that have been able to help us, because without ticket revenue and without some of those things, it would be impossible to do a show. But the UFC understood that and helped us in many different ways for us to make it feasible for us to be able to pull off shows. And like I said, I know that you mentioned earlier, and I didn't even touch on it with the whole Access TV thing. When the Access TV thing happened and they did what they did to us, it was devastating at the time. But I was very happy. There's organizations out there that have been in business for 10 years and have never really gotten a distribution deal. And I feel very fortunate with our relationship with the UFC, the team that we have in place, and the product that we put out, that 5 weeks after we were let go from them breaching their contract and shutting us down, we were able to get a deal with UFC Fight Pass. And like I said, the only regret I have with being with the UFC Fight Pass is that I wish we would have been there earlier. As far as partners, as far as the team, as far as what they've done for our brand, the notoriety they've given us, and how much we've grown, it's tremendous. And I just feel very blessed and grateful to have such great partners like UFC and UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah, without a doubt. I watched that quite frequently, man. I'm friends with, I was Mike Kendall, Pat. I've always been a fan of your work. So it really did, I was really upset for you guys, man, that was kind of just yanked out of the, the rug was yanked underneath you like that. But I was so relieved, man, because, Pat being a UFC champion, is nice for all of that to really come full circle. And, I kind of what we talked about, you're obviously partnered up with the UFC, so it makes things a lot easier for you. But I'm so glad you guys got back on track because, with lockdowns, et cetera, what you do, what we do with promoting fights, it's kind of COVID proof to some degree. As long as we stay within the guidelines and, have everybody tested and mask wearing, you guys are producing content and keeping content out there because people are staying at home and they just want stuff to look at, and you guys, you guys absolutely bring the pain with LFA. So I was really, really happy for you guys to get back hooked up with the UFC. And cool to see you guys going.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, it was great, and I got to tell you, when we first launched this thing, we partnered up with Sanford Health in South Dakota, and they're a company out there that's based out of South Dakota, and we've had a long relationship with them because we were actually the first promoters as the RFA. We have, our promoter license is 0001. We were the first licensed promoters when in South Dakota when they actually put a sanctioning body in place we were the first ones to have a promoter's license. So we had a great relationship with them. We utilized a venue that it's called the Sanford Pentagon out there that's owned by Sanford Health. So when we decided to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at that time, they had a very low amount of cases out there, and also with the staffing and the whole medical background that they had, it made it a really safe and easy transition to go there. And like I said, without the UFC and Sanford Health, they're the ones that really enabled us to be able to pull this off. And like I said, we're very grateful that we were the second MMA organization back. And like I said, we just keep moving forward and keep building. And that's what we love to do.
And that's all you really can do. Yeah, and it's kudos, a testament to you guys' determination to keep your train moving, man. I love to see it. So moving on to, I'll let you slide here in a minute, but I can't have a conversation with you without talking about one of my absolute favorites. Like I said, one of the greatest to ever do it. Anderson, the Spider Silva, fought most recently against Uriah Hall. Didn't quite go the way he wanted it to. Anderson, I mean, I know you probably, I don't know if you have this conversation. The man has really nothing more to prove. He is the GOAT and will remain the GOAT. What's that ride been like, man? I remember that first fight with Chris Lieben up until this last fight. What's this UFC ride been like, man?
You know what, man? I have to say, it wasn't always roses and a walk in the park, but I got to say that I'm extremely grateful for Anderson Silva in what part he played in my professional career. And the experience that I got and learned from him, and I'd like to believe that hopefully he feels the same way about us, that we played a big part in his career. But it was just an honor to be by. To me, he is the GOAT. I know that he has some blemishes on his record, some losses, some things like that. But at the end of the day, when he was in his prime, doing what he was doing. I can remember when he was in his prime, fighting. I used to tell people all the time that not only I would put him against any fighter in any weight division, and I believed 100% that Anderson Silva was going to beat anybody on the planet in any weight class during that time. I mean, the things he was able to do inside the octagon, the barriers he was able to cross. I mean, let's face it, he was the first mixed martial arts athlete sponsored by Nike, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one.
Yeah. People forget about that one.
People forget about that. People forget about a lot of things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
People forget about it. But to me, he's the greatest to ever do it. The greatest. I mean, there was an aura about him when he was at that time that he really was untouchable, and it was incredible. It was incredible to be there by his side. I was privileged, I was blessed, and I was honored every step of the way to be by his side. And like I said, he is a huge part of my resume, and I'm very grateful and honored to have been a part of it, and blessed, really.
Yeah.
Blessed and like I said, blessed and honored is pretty much the word, the words that I would say the best. It was incredible. It was an incredible ride, I've just so many memorable moments and times that I've experienced with Anderson, and like I said, I'm just lucky to have been able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be able to be alive to have witnessed like a Michael Jordan or an Anderson Silva, I mean, you just don't see that kind of elite next level, kind of ability. I mean, what he was doing what he did to Rich Franklin to win the title was amazing. Rich Franklin was a bad man. What he did to, I know you remember John Irvin. John Irvin was supposed to be like the next thing or whatever after he knocked out Houston Alexander. I mean, what he did to that man was just like soul crushing.
James Irvin.
I'm sorry, James Irvin. You're absolutely correct. I apologize. Or even like Forrest Griffin. I mean, he had Forrest Griffin running out of and Vitor Belfort, straight front kick to the face. What is this, Karate Kid? It's like he was just doing things you didn't see. Even Joe Rogan, when he'd call it, he'd be like, wow, this is just something special to be able to watch. So I can only imagine being able to conversate and rub elbows and, just chat it up with, the GOAT, Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I mean, it was odd. And I think one of the coolest things I remember Joe Rogan saying, and I always remember it, he said, "It is a ballet of violence."
Yeah.
Is what it was. It was a ballet of violence. It really was. I mean, nobody moved and did the things he did and was able to execute and was as precise as Anderson Silva. And I can remember sometimes sitting there talking to him, and I would say, "Dude, like, you're the best, don't you think?" And he goes, "Nah." I don't really think I'm the best, Ed. I just feel that I could do things that people think are impossible.
Yeah, that was a good impression because he always had that kind of like, you just kind of, I hear for fight.
Yeah. It's normal.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Obviously, all the martial artists I've spoken to, Pat, Boss, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, they're just true martial artists. They're really they could rip your head off if they needed to, but ultimately, they're just the most chillest, humblest people, oftentimes you could ever meet.
Yeah, and sometimes people you wouldn't understand. There were times there where people started thinking, "Oh, Anderson's really thinking he's the shit now," and thinking that, and what people don't understand, and it's always easy to sit back and say, if I was in that position, I would have never done that, or I would have never acted this way. But I got to tell you something, man. When you are the greatest fighter on the planet for 7 years, so think about that, 7 years. Not everywhere you went in the world, people were kissing your ass, telling you you were the greatest, that you're the baddest, that you're this, that you're that. Man, no normal human being in their right mind can say what they do in that position. Because I can tell you, being by his side during that time, you could be as humble as you want, but when you're traveling around the world everywhere you go for 7 years and people are telling you how great you are, dude, that's a hard thing to swallow and overcome.
Yeah, that'll gas you up a little bit. Not only are people telling that to you,
dude,
yeah.
You really are. It's like, come on, think about it. 7 years of you doing whatever you feel like doing in your mind to do that, and this whole approach to things. Like, I can remember that Rich Franklin fight, at the end of the first Rich Franklin fight. I remember the date, dude, October 14th, 2006. We're there and we're in the locker room, and then all of a sudden, the fights are going on, and now all of a sudden, now I start getting nervous. I start fucking tripping out, going, what the hell's going on, dude? Like, I'm about to have a guy go out and fight for this. Is the first time as a manager that I've got a guy fighting for the world title. So I started getting tripped out. And Anderson was such a martial artist and such a G, dude, that he can notice that I was getting nervous. He was noticing in his locker room that I started to getting nervous. So as he's hitting mitts and doing things, he's looking at me and he's winking and he's kind of like, trying to make me laugh. And I'm kind of like, yeah. But like, you can tell that I got a lot of shit going on in my mind. And then sure enough, the co-main event ended, and here comes Anderson coming out for the main event, and you hear Burt Watson going, "We rolling," the whole, here we go. And then all of a sudden I open up the door, and they open up the door. I open up the door, and I'm holding the door, and a couple of the coaches walks by, and then he walks by me, and he looks at me, and he walks by me, then he takes a step back, he looks at me, and he winks, and he goes, "Relax. I'm going to knock Skinny out real quick. Let's go."
Oh, shit.
That's what he said to me, dude. He looked at me, and he kind of stopped, paused, and he said that. And I'll never forget that. He said, "Hey, relax. I'm going to knock Skinny out real quick. Let's go." And then when he did that, I'm like, fuck. How can I be worried? Look at what the guy just told me. Let's go. You know what I mean? And sure enough, he went out there and did that, you know?
That's the day you go buy some lottery numbers, man. Luck is on, not luck, I mean, but, you know, fortune was on your side that day. And what was so scary, man, that Rich Franklin fight, or the second one, he pretty went out and replicated the same performance, threw him in the plum and kneed the shit out of him. It was just like, I just had to have been really demoralizing for him. Well, and I don't know how much, I'm going to let you slide here in a minute and just ask you a couple more questions. And if you don't, I don't know if you want to chime in on this. How devastating and was it that the catastrophic injury he had against Chris Weidman? What was his thoughts weeks, months after that? Did he think he was done? Did he think, no, we'll be back kind of thing? Because obviously that was a horrific injury. How much, I guess, we saw the physical toll, but how much psychological toll did that take on him, if you don't mind answering?
You know what, man? Anderson was such a ninja about everything that he's always been very calm. He's always been very calculated on things like that. So, you know, I'm sure mentally he was going through a lot of things, and I can remember that night very vividly because I didn't even realize what happened. And then I was the first guy in the ring that was from his team. So, but one thing I do remember is I remember walking up, and he was laying down, and you could tell that he was like looking up, and he was like in pain, and he was kind of going into shock. But he when he saw me, it was like a face he recognized, and I could remember laying down and just kind of caressing his head, saying, "Hey, breathe, man, breathe." And as soon as I did that, they pulled traction on his leg, and I could remember the scream he gave and the face expression he gave. Was something that I'll never forget, you know, and I can recall, you know, going to the hospital with him. I went with him, and then he went into surgery, and then that night after he got out of surgery, I was at the hotel, and then I went, and you know, I slept in a recliner for 5 nights next to his bed in the hospital. Until we were able to leave, and I remember the first night, you know, he didn't get out of surgery till probably about 3:30 in the morning, and you know, and he had a like a morphine drip thing for the pain, so he was only able to press the button once every 9 minutes. Okay, so what would happen was, is he'd be in pain, he'd press the button, the morphine drip would go in there. And then he would, you know, and then he was able to go to sleep. But then he'd wake up because, you know, the morphine would only come when you pressed the button. So that first night, you know, he didn't sleep well. So the next night, man, I stayed up the whole night, and every 9 to 10 minutes I was pressing the morphine drip so he could sleep the whole night. And, wow. You know, those are the kinds of things that you know, that's what you do, man. That to me, it wasn't that he was my client. He was my friend. He was my brother. He was part of my family. So it's just like, you know, those are the things that sometimes people don't understand. That you know, I've had some of the most incredible moments in mixed martial arts by his side, and I've also had some of the worst moments in mixed martial arts by his side, and I don't regret any of them. As a matter of fact, I just feel grateful and blessed to be able to have experienced all those moments with such an icon in the sport.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, nothing in life or anything like that is always roses and sunshine. But that's deep, man. That's deep. That is that's real loyalty, Ed. That's really cool, man. That's really cool. And well, in that, as I get ready to sign out here, as we look at Anderson's career, the man truly has nothing more to prove, and he's expressing that he does want to continue to fight. I know he was recently released by the UFC. I think I read something today that one championship doesn't want to enter any kind of bidding for his services. What do you see his career as? Does he? And for me, I always hate to see, whether it's Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Chuck Liddell, anybody who's been just absolutely amazing, just holding on maybe a little bit too long. You don't have to chime on that because that's nobody's decision but the fighter to make that decision. But what are your thoughts on him moving forward?
You know, at the end of the day, it's so hard to speak on, man. You know, at the end of the day, it's him. It's him. That's not a choice that anybody in the world can make other than himself.
Right.
And, you know, I think he may be limited to where he may be able to go. And, you know, who knows? I think the will to want to still compete. And listen, man, granted, he lost by TKO, but let's not forget, dude, he was up 2-0, and he was about 10 to 15 seconds away from being up 3-0 in the Uriah Hall fight.
Yeah.
Then he got clipped.
Yeah.
So let's be realistic. If it would have been a 3-round fight, he would have won that fight.
When he went the distance with Israel Adesanya, went the distance with Daniel Cormier, I mean, he still got it.
Yeah. And listen, he took that fight on, you know, and it's funny because there's always a figure of speech that people say, like, oh, yeah, you know, I didn't really train for this fight. Let me tell you something, dude. This is how much of an OG gangster Anderson Silva is, okay? So I'm sitting there in Vegas, and I had Kat Zingano fighting that same night of UFC 200, right? I had her fighting that week. So I'm in Vegas, and as soon as that shit happened with Cormier, with John Jones in the Cormier fight, and that came out and I'm sitting there on the couch in my hotel room, just sitting there. All of a sudden, I get a text message from Anderson saying, "I'll fight the fat kid." That's what he sent me. He said, "I'll fight the fat kid."
That's hilarious.
And I go, what? And I called him and I go, what? And he goes, "Yeah, man, I'll fight the fat kid. No problem. Tell Dana I'll fight the fat kid." I said, "Dude, are you serious, man?" I go, "Dude, you just had gallbladder surgery 55 days ago. You haven't trained." He goes, "Yeah, because remember, he was supposed to fight Uriah Hall at the end of April that year. But in Curitiba, but he had to pull out of the fight because he had emergency gallbladder surgery in Brazil. So then he basically had that surgery. He literally, when I say didn't work out, he didn't work out, dude. He didn't even train one day, not even one day. So then I called Dana and I said, "Hey, Dana, Anderson says he'll fight Cormier." He's like, "Are you serious?" And I go, "Yeah, man." He goes, "Find out if he's serious." And I called Anderson back. I go, "Hey, dude, I just talked to Dana. Dana's like asking me, 'Are you serious?'" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm serious."
Wow.
And then the thing was that he says, "But I only want to fight him 3 rounds." And I go, and then I call Dana, and Dana's like, "Well, dude, we want to make it a 5-round. We want to make it for the title." And I go, "Yeah, dude, but Anderson, you know, he hasn't really trained, Dana. He hasn't trained, and he feels confident that he can hang with anybody for 3 rounds, but 5 rounds he feels like it may be a problem." He goes, "Oh man, we got to make it for 5 rounds." And I go, "Listen, I remember telling Dana and Lorenzo, I go, would you rather have a confident Anderson Silva for 3 rounds or an unconfident Anderson Silva for 5? And then he's like, "Well, you know, I can't do it." And it kind of went back and forth. And then that was on I want to say it was on a Tuesday night. No, it was on a Wednesday night. And then that weekend was the same weekend that they were inducting Nogueira into the UFC Hall of Fame. So Anderson was on his way out to be part of the induction of Big Nog into the UFC Hall of Fame. So basically that whole, like, from 7 o'clock on Wednesday till all the way until Thursday morning, we're going back and forth, and Dana wants to do it for 5 rounds, and I said, "Dude, he's only going to fight for 3, and then he's like, "Okay, then I'm not going to do it," and I said, "Okay, fine." So then Anderson is in his car with his kids driving to Vegas, and then Dana calls me and goes, "Listen, if I do this fight for 3 rounds, will Anderson take the fight?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'll call him right now just to confirm." And And he goes, because I'll do it. I'll do it for 3 rounds, but it's got to be 100% for sure that he's going to do it. And I said, okay. So I call Anderson, and Anderson's on the road, dude, with his kids in his car, on the road from L.A. to Vegas, driving, right? And I go, hey, dude, Dana just called and says he'll do the fight at 3 rounds. Are you willing to do it? And he goes, yeah, I'm willing to do it. He goes, I brought my mouthpiece. I said, what? He goes, I brought my mouthpiece. I said, you brought your mouthpiece? He goes, yeah, I didn't bring anything else. I figured if I was to get in a fight, all I needed is my mouthpiece. So I just brought my mouthpiece. And I go, all right. So then the fight happens, and he wasn't joking, dude. He didn't bring anything. He brought just his mouthpiece. He didn't have any gloves. He didn't have any equipment, nothing. He shows up in Vegas with just his mouthpiece 48 hours before fighting Daniel Cormier with just his mouthpiece. And when I say he didn't fight or didn't train, he didn't fucking train. The only thing he did was hit mitts on that Thursday night and Friday, made weight and fought.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not about it's not about L's and W's. Yeah, that's one of those things
that guy's a fucking, he's a legend.
Yeah,
he's a legend, and that's why I'm saying that it almost seems like I wrote that's made that stuff up. But and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to watch that documentary that we produced of Anderson called Like Water.
Oh yeah.
But I could tell, I mean that documentary is really I felt a behind the scenes look of what and who Anderson Silva really is.
Well, and it ended well. That documentary ended with him. I think it was the first Chael Sonnen fight. That obviously would have been a different ending to that movie. And that's another aspect of why he is the GOAT. The way he was literally snatched victory from the mouths of defeat in that fight. I mean, that was a very gutty performance from Chael, but the way he just pulled out that triangle at the end was just like you just don't. It's like you're right, like you said, it's like it's written in a movie or something. You just don't get that kind of storybook ending.
Well, 100%. Like if that wasn't a documentary and it was a movie, you'd say, of course the movie ends like that. It's a movie,
right? Yeah.
Of course it ends like that. But the thing that's crazy is, imagine if Rocky was a documentary. That's what that was.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I'd highly recommend that to people. If you're just an MMA fan in general, that documentary Like Water is pretty powerful stuff. Man.
Yeah, it was an incredible. That was another great experience that I got to do, is to be an executive producer of that documentary and for us to win an award at the Tribeca Film Festival. It was just like I said, Anderson Silva has enabled not only himself but so many other people around him to cross so many barriers, and that's why I just feel blessed and fortunate to have, and like I said, it wasn't all roses, dude. We've had our bad times too, but overall, man, I wouldn't change anything, man. I really wouldn't, and I'm just blessed and grateful to have been able to experience what I did with him, and to be honest with you, as a manager, I've just been blessed and grateful to experience so many great people, like, to be able to work with Lyoto Machida, to work with the Nogueira brothers, to work with Glover Teixeira, to work with so many greats and future Hall of Famers. It's just been a great ride.
Well,
you're gonna have very lucky.
You're gonna have a very good book, my man. But like anything else in life, like you said, you can't have the good without the bad. It's really powerful stuff you're saying about being by Anderson's side during that dark time. You've obviously forged a very, very powerful friendship, brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. But obviously, it transcends that, like you said, manager-client relationship, and that's really cool, man. In the fight game, sometimes you just don't. Like you said, people don't actually fulfill all their obligations or not what they appear, just kind of shady sometimes in the game. But that's really cool that you guys have the relationship that you do. Before I let you slide, man, 2020's been crazy. What do you guys have in store for 2021?
Man, 2021, man, I'm with LFA, I'm extremely excited about what we're doing. We're really looking at opportunities of expanding our footprint globally. We're really looking at expanding internationally possibly next year, and things are looking really good. And like I said, I'm just excited to be able to, in 2021, to be putting on 24 kick-ass shows on UFC Fight Pass. And like I said, just blessed to just keep building talent and just keep that factory going, man. You know, like I said, you know, over 30% of the UFC's current roster are LFA alumni, and not only the UFC, but you know, we're sending a tremendous amount of people to Bellator too. And you know, people are always saying that, you know, we not only want to be the number one developmental organization for the UFC, but we want to be the number one developmental organization of the sport. So, you know, our goal that we set out was to be the the Division I NCAA of our sport, and I feel that we've gotten there. And now it's just a matter of keep breaking barriers and keep doing better, because now that we're ahead of everybody, I don't want to let anybody even come close. I just want them to, you know, feel the vapors.
Absolutely. In the rearview mirror, man. Well, you're obviously good at it. You know what you're doing. You know how to cultivate talent. You know how to produce a very, you know, elite level production, man. I'm really stoked for you, man. I'm glad you guys found a home back in the UFC, and I really can't thank you enough for your time, man. Again, I appreciate it so much. I appreciate what you do, your work, and just hanging out. You were, you know, very down to earth kind of cat, man. I'd love to pick your brain, and I'm sure the book, when it comes out, it's gonna be chock full of even more stories. I can only imagine.
Yeah, man, but I got to say, you know, it's very nice, you know, that I'm, you know, being the CEO of the company, you know, I get a lot of praise. I get a lot of praise for what we do with the LFA, but I got to tell you, man, that I'm just a small, and I'm not saying this to try to be humble. I'm saying this to be the truth. I'm really a small part of it, man, because, you know, my business partners, Sven Bean and Mark Berry, and our production team from Chris Markwell to Jamie God, I can't pronounce his name right now.
Jamie Mick.
Yeah, Jamie Mick. Yeah, exactly, Jamie Mick. But I mean, just our whole production team, and having Pat Miletich and having you know, just the whole staff and team that makes this thing possible. It really McClintock, that's what it was. For some reason I couldn't come out of my mouth. Jamie McClintock and AJ and Wade and just everybody that puts it together. We really truly have a family and a team. You know, Ron Kruk and Pat Miletich and it's like, you know, really, man, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Team, everybody together is what really makes it. And okay, I'll take some of the responsibility for it, but I got to tell you, man, I'm just a small part of it. It's everybody working together is what really has made us successful. And I'm just blessed to have the team that I have to make it look so easy.
Well, and I'm sure they appreciate you recognizing that. And like me being a part of Cage Aggression MMA, you know, it's one of the largest promotions in the Midwest, and that you are so very correct. Mike Goodwin, the CEO, could not do this by himself. He's had to assemble the right team, and that's exactly what it's taken. So that's I'm just really happy for you guys and looking forward to 2021. Any social network you can throw out there? We can either follow you or the promotion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my Instagram is, you know, and everything is Ed Blackhouse, and then LFA Fighting, at LFA Fighting is our Instagram and our Twitter and all of that, and yeah, I mean, that's what we do, man, and like I said, I'm just blessed to have been able to make it through this year and navigating through all the adversities that we had to navigate through.
For sure.
And I got to say, this was a very successful year for us, and I'm looking forward to 2021 even being more successful. And I just hope people keep tuning in, and hopefully people appreciate and recognize what we're doing and what we keep doing.
Absolutely. Keep it up, man. LFA, Legacy Fighting Alliance, can be found on UFC Fight Pass. This has been Ed Soares. Thank you again so much, Terry, for your time, brother. Enjoy your holidays and enjoy and get into kicking ass in 2020, my friend. I thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Absolutely, you too.